Is our brain wired for addiction? Today, we're diving deep into the world of dopamine addiction. We'll uncover how this neurotransmitter, responsible for pleasure and motivation, can lead to various addictions in our modern society. From smartphones to drugs. And more importantly, what it means for our well-being. If you find this video interesting, please support us by hitting the like button. Now, let's get started. In our high-stress modern society, addiction has become a pressing concern. Alcohol, tobacco, drugs, gambling, video games, the internet, and even the media are all sources of addiction in today's society. The focus of our discussion today is the underlying cause of this dependence: dopamine addiction. Wandering around, feeling bored with repetitive routines, and constantly seeking new stimuli are common feelings. Endlessly scrolling on social media, preferring short texts, watching quick movie compilations, and being glued to our phones are all signs of dopamine-driven addictions. Amidst these addictions, it's essential to remember the value of time spent with family and friends. Some of you might see yourselves in this description, while others might think of someone they know. So, what exactly is dopamine? Dopamine is a neurotransmitter produced by nerve cells in the brain, and is also known as a pleasure substance. Dopamine is a hormone responsible for functions like pleasure, desire, and motivation. It also plays a role in emotion and motor regulation. Without dopamine, our emotional experiences would be significantly diminished. Pleasure, euphoria, a sense of fullness, and a unique sense of significance are outcomes of dopamine production. Furthermore, dopamine is a very important hormone for humans, playing a major role not only in pleasure, but also in behavior, cognition, motivation, punishment and reward, sleep, memory, motor function, and learning. When dopamine is released, it enhances our mood, challenges us to act, sharpens our focus, and heightens our sense of accomplishment. While some might see the frequent release of dopamine as beneficial, due to the consistent feelings of joy it brings, others might question the implications of such a constant state of happiness. However, as with everything, too much is not good. Excessive dopamine production can transmit overstimulation to the brain, which can lead to oversensitivity to things, delusions of grandeur, schizophrenia, and even threatening disorders. In addition, the brain's continued presence of large amounts of dopamine can lead to a lack of satisfaction with the normal amount of dopamine secreted, and eventually to a reduced ability to both secrete and receive dopamine, resulting in a lack of motivation and a sense of well-being. Not only does a lack of dopamine lead to a lack of interest in things, but it can also impair learning, sexual, and even motor functions. Parkinson's disease, in which the hands shake and the body does not move as it should, is also caused by a decrease in dopamine, and is also associated with depression and ADHD. The amount of dopamine released has an important effect on the brain. In reality, a significant portion of today's society exhibits signs of dopamine addiction. When you have time, don't you just pick up your smartphone and scroll endlessly on the screen? Do you gravitate towards short, engaging videos while finding longer content tedious? This is an addiction that is the result of continuous immersion in dopamine. So, are we all going to fall into a severe mental illness in the near future? Dopamine addiction is not about the substance dopamine itself, but about becoming addicted to the activity that produces dopamine, in other words, the circuits in the brain that seek dopamine as a reward. When addictive substances such as drugs or nicotine bind to reward-related neurons, large amounts of dopamine are released. In 1954, neuroscientists James Olds and Peter Milner at McGill University in Canada discovered the brain's reward system. They implanted electrodes in rats' brains, which, when the rats pressed a lever in a box, stimulated the core with an electric current. In this experiment, the rats gave up eating food and even sleeping, and continued to press the lever, even beyond the limits of their physical strength. Pleasure is essential for motivation, and sustaining the motivation needed to live. However, if the secretion continues to disrupt the amount and rhythm of its natural release in daily life, the body becomes increasingly dependent and addicted. This is why frequent content viewing and sexual activity are considered bad. Nicotine, caffeine, alcohol, drugs, tranquilizers, and playing with your phone are all substances and acts that can easily lead to pleasure. It is dopamine that causes us to remember and repeat these pleasurable acts. Ultimately, addiction is a dopamine secretion problem. When people who get addicted to drugs find their bodies and minds in shambles and their lives ruined, it is because their dopamine secretion system has collapsed. Drugs produce 2 to 10 times more dopamine than normal and last longer. So the pleasures felt in everyday life are rapidly disappearing. And people begin to seek greater and greater stimulation. While drugs are an extreme example, a more relatable risk factor for many is smartphones. Many experts highlight the dangers of smartphone addiction, drawing parallels to alcohol and drug dependencies because of how it stimulates the brain's reward system. This stimulation comes from the need for approval, the desire for recognition. Frequently checking notifications, and engaging on social media platforms. Repeated acts of dependence that are rewarded by dependence cause the brain to change. The dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which controls feelings of pleasure, sleep, and appetite, and the anterior cingulate cortex, which is involved in self-regulation, are reduced in volume, and problem-solving, concentration, comprehension, and memory are impaired. Some scholars argue that dopamine addiction should be treated as a social problem. The notable book, Dopamine Addiction, by psychiatrist Anna Lembke, delves into the concept of the dopamine economy, highlighting how the chase for pleasure has evolved into a business. The book, which garnered attention even before its release, addresses the rewarding stimuli prevalent in today's society. Dopamine addiction is also a reflection of the reality of a world that is difficult to live in. Young people, often grappling with feelings of depression and anxiety, are especially susceptible to dopamine addiction. It is a kind of escape from reality. Because they have no hope for success or achievement through hard work, they seek strong, easy pleasures to distract themselves from their depression and anxiety. Drugs also give them pleasure in small doses at first, but they take larger and larger doses. This is the same with other dependencies. While dopamine naturally propels us towards a fulfilling life, an overstimulation from excessive indulgences can be detrimental. I encourage you to take the opportunity to think about the addictions that you may not yet be aware of, or that you know you have, but cannot stop. Many grapple with the challenge of dopamine addiction, which is intricate and often difficult to conquer. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more insightful content. Take care and see you in the next video. Goodbye.